In our last session, we were talking about the central bank, the very first central bank in the world, the Bank of England. The nickname for that central bank is called the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street. The nickname for the Bank of England is called the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street. Kind of a bit of trivia there and a bit of British humor. But central banking is a profitable business for our friend Mr. Peterson, William Peterson, didn't stay in that business very long. He went into other kind of ventures in Panama and other places. He was quite an ingenious fellow, William Patterson. But there were others who bought shares into the Central Bank of England. And of course, if your bank is the bank that creates all the money that the entire nation uses, you don't get much closer than that to owning a money tree. I mean, if you in your backyard you have a money tree and you can go out and just harvest all the money that you want, that's a pretty valuable tree. So to own the central bank of an entire nation is about as lucrative as it can possibly be. So it is a very, very influential institution. Founding fathers weren't all that keen. The founding fathers of this country were not all that keen on a central bank. They understood that England had spent a lot of money, something called the French and Indian War, in Canada. And of course, they didn't have the money, so they borrowed their money from the central bank. And like our example very early in the class where I created my own money, I created my own Ross Justice notes and traded it for laptops and computers, and as long as people would accept for it, it was real money. But it wasn't official money. In other words, it wasn't backed by the government or anything. It was only backed by my credit worthiness. But when you're talking about the central bank, you're talking about the king's bank. You're talking about the king's money. You're talking about the national money. You're talking about the kind of money that you have to have in order to pay your taxes. So that builds in an automatic demand for that kind of money. So you have to pay your taxes in the money that's created by the central bank. Now, in this French and Indian War, the government ran into some debt. And the banker said, yeah, we loaned you the money, but the deal is you got to pay us back some interest sometime, you know. And so the government had to pay back some of the principal plus the interest on the loans that they had borrowed from the central bank to make sure that the French didn't take over the United States from Canada and to fight them to a stalemate to keep them up in that Quebec area up there. And to keep that under British control. But they don't have enough money. And they got to pay back interest on the loans for their little military exhibition. And the people in Parliament say, hey, wait a minute. These colonists, they're getting kind of a free ride here. We're fighting to keep the French away, and we're fighting to protect our area here, but they're free riding. I mean, they're getting the benefit of all of this. We're keeping the Indians away from them and all that, and they're not paying for any of that. So we think that the colonies should pay for all the benefits of our military excursion over there in this French and Indian War. Well, from a colonist perspective, they're thinking, well, wait a minute. You took out a loan from the central bank, from the old lady of Threadneedle Street there, to do what you would have done whether we were here or not, and now you want us to pay taxes to you so you can pay the interest on your national debt. And you remember the phrase of the colonists, no taxation without representation. You know, we don't have any say in this. You could just tax us into oblivion. We don't have any representatives. How you just going to cram this down our throats? We don't have anybody in Parliament. What is this? There's no taxation without representation. You're acting like a dictator. We're English people. We've got the rights of English people. You can't treat us as some foreigner or something like that. So colonists really didn't like this idea of taxation without representation. But where did it all start? It all started because the government got themselves in deep debt, and they got to pay the interest, and they got to get the money from somewhere. So, hey, let's go get it from the colonists. So knowing that picture and knowing that that played a role in the Revolutionary War, they're saying, hey, this government, they can get themselves in deep doo-doo, and this central bank has more power over the government than the government has over the central bank. And we don't want to be beholden to a bunch of private bankers someplace who tell us that we've got to raise the taxes just so they can get their interest back. Yeah, we got ourselves in a jam, but we felt we had to borrow the money. But yeah, they extract a pound of flesh. I mean, they can make life rough for us because they own the entire money supply. So the Founding Fathers really were not keen on the central bank at all. But during the colonial period, there was, by the way, our central bank in this country is called the Federal Reserve. That's our central bank. And until 2008, I can almost put a date on it like that, nobody in any bar would sit down and over a beer start talking about the merits of central banking. It just, nobody outside of an economics course had hardly even know the thing existed. They just thought it was part of the government. They didn't know its history. They didn't know how it got here. It has all kinds of credibility. Nobody questions it. But from the very first exposure to central banking in this country, all the way up to the creation of a central bank in this country in 1913, central banking has been the most hot, politically debated concept in American politics. All the way to people shooting each other at duels. And including, you don't have to go very far afield here, including all the intrigue of presidential assassinations. There's all kinds of evidence and loose threads about that as well. It was a very, very hot political topic in American history. It just so happens that until relatively recently, it's been copacetic, everything's done, nobody even talks about it. It's just, that's the way things are. So the very first experiment with central banking in the United States was called the Bank of North America. The Bank of North America. And the person that was most influential in that creation of that bank and use of that bank as a central bank was Alexander Hamilton. Of course, he was one of the favorites of George Washington, and he was politically connected to the central banking families of Europe, and the central banking families of Europe have been really working hard to try to expand their business into North America. And that was their first shot. Now the owners and the dynasties, the financial dynasties in Europe of the central banking family, it stays in the family, and it's been a family business generation after generation after generation for a long, long time. And so whatever generation it was, they would like to expand that family business into another thriving economy. Even if they're going to break off from Great Britain, we still want to do central banking business in that particular geography. Well, it did not last forever. And the second experiment with central banking in this country was called the First Bank of the United States. It was given a charter just like the first one was given a charter. Again, it was hotly politically debated, and it was nip and tuck whether it was going to stay in existence or not. This whole idea that we have to use this bank's money and the tight connection between this bank and the government and the opportunities for insider favors, it was just a little bit more than the American public could handle. And when its charter ran out, it died, and it was over. But that wasn't the end of it. Again, the central banking powers of Europe tried again to get a central bank into this country because it's good business. And they wanted to continue to expand their business, which led to the second Bank of the United States. Again, a 20-year charter. And again, hotly, fiercely debated. It was the issue in all the papers, although we can hardly conceive that it would be a hot political debate in our era at all. And it wasn't until roughly 2008 and a presidential election in which one particular candidate had a phrase, "in the Fed." And to most Americans, what do you mean? In the federal government? That's what they thought. They didn't really understand it. It was talking about in the idea of central banking. That was just way, way too bizarre, especially bizarre after generation have been raised on economic textbooks in which central banking and the Federal Reserve is viewed as the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the thing that holds the country together. It's the thing that bails out the government. It's the thing that keeps us out of depressions. It's the thing that gives us full employment. It does all those great and wonderful things. And so the idea that someone would come along and say, "in that," it's like you're asking, like, stop the United States or something. It was almost unthinkable. But today, there is a whole wave of college students who are virtually marching around with "in the Fed" signs and slogans, and large groups of volunteer student organizations around this particular topic, and it's beginning to be a hot topic again, especially when we see the Fed doing things like quantitative easing and bailing out mega large corporations on Wall Street, and they're saying that's the Fed. The Fed is at the very, very heart of it. At the very heart of Goldman Sachs. The same people who are managing the Fed come from Goldman Sachs, and we're done with Goldman Sachs, they go back to the Fed, and you got this revolving door, and it's this cronyism and all this sort of stuff, and it has started to become a hot political topic again. And so in 1913 we have what we have today, the central bank called the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System. Again, it began in 1913. So please note that we're over 200 years old, and we had a country here called the United States with a government that existed for basically 100 years, for about half of this nation's history, without any central bank. We went from a fairly insignificant country to a world political powerhouse without any central bank. And we should also notice that it's not merely coincidence that in the same year and the same session that created the Federal Reserve System also created the federal income tax. Now the correlation there is, if the central bank is going to loan money to the government, there needs to be some funding mechanism to make sure that the government's going to be able to pay back at least interest on this growing national debt. And the way that can be done, most simply, is through an income tax. Now again, we didn't have an income tax until 1913. And it happened with the same year, the same Congress, that we have a Federal Reserve. Now, you could say, well, that was just coincidence, but it's a very odd sort of coincidence. Now, let's stop there, and we're going to come back and start to talk about the tools, the duties and the tools of the central bank of the United States called the Federal Reserve System.